Hello and welcome to Main Story Tonight. Let's talk about China, the country we are most obsessed with after Pakistan.
चालबाज चीन, हो जाओ सावधान। इस बार पीछे नहीं हटेगा हिंदुस्तान।
So let's try to understand what makes China so important, because only if you understand competition can you actually beat it one day.
We have to stare back. And trust me, the Chinese will budge, we know it.
The main reason, which is not hidden to anybody, is China's economy.
40 years ago, it was a poor, largely rural nation, with at least 30% of its population living in poverty. That started to change in 1978, when China launched major economic reforms.
So let's get down to some details. According to the World Bank, as of 2019, China was the world's second largest economy with a GDP of around $14.3 trillion, only behind the USA, which had a GDP of around $21.4 trillion. India came in at a distant number 5, which had a GDP of around $2.87 trillion. Now, where does this economic power of China come from? It clearly comes from trade. The World Trade Organization divides trade in mainly two categories: merchandise trade and trade in commercial services. Tonight we'll mainly talk about merchandise trade, because according to the WTO statistical report of 2019, merchandise trade brought in about $19.67 trillion, which was 3 times more than commercial services, which brought about $5.63 trillion. In 2018, China was not only the world's leading merchandise trader in the world, but also the world's largest exporter. Yeah, who would have thought that just in 10 years, China would overtake USA, because in 2008, USA was the world's leading exporter.
The country relied on cheap, plentiful labour to become the largest manufacturer and exporter of goods on the planet, accounting for a fifth of global trade.
In 2018, China was among the top exporters of almost all merchandise goods. Keeping EU aside, China was number 1 in manufactures, number 1 in iron and steel, number 1 in textiles, number 1 in clothing, and number 1 in office and telecom equipment. China accounted for almost 1/3 of office and telecom equipment. There are high chances that the office equipment they are using is Chinese. Now you may be thinking that China is succeeding because it is providing ready-made finished goods. But there is more to that, because China has become a major part of what is called global value chains, a worldwide network of countries that carry out trade in different parts of a particular product. Take the examples of Bianchi bicycles. The World Bank says that they design the bicycles in Italy, assembles them in Taiwan, and make them from the parts from China and Japan. So much so that China is a top exporter in saddles, frames, wheels, pedals, cranks, and the only thing left is brakes. But I guess China doesn't believe in stopping.
Stop it. Get some help.
China is producing more at home now, or has become Atmanirbhar, because it has reduced the share of imported parts for its own export products to 30% in 2015 from 50% in the 1990s. But the opposite seems to be happening for most countries, which are importing more and more of Chinese products.
China is the world's factory. It produces a lot of our goods and the bits we need to make our goods. It's become a global powerhouse. For example, it makes 70% of the world's air conditioners, 58% of the world's shoes. It's also the world's largest printer of Bibles.
But China's trade is not always fair and square. China has been accused of carrying out dumping. And no, dumping does not mean breaking up from your lover. In trade, dumping means that selling a product at a very cheap price, aiming to destroy competition in an importing country. Now this brings us to India. If we have to succeed in fighting dumping or grow home industries according to the government's Atmanirbhar plan, then we have to boost almost all activities of merchandise trade. In financial year 2020, China was India's second largest trading partner at $81.8 billion, behind the USA with trade at $88.7 billion. But there's something terribly uneasy about this relationship, because with China we had imports of around $65.2 billion and exports of around $16.6 billion. So we had a very huge trade deficit at around $48 billion with China. You may already know some areas of high imports, such as in the category of electric machinery, television, sound recorders, where India imported around $19.1 billion worth of products. But there are other areas, such as in the category of nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, mechanic appliances, where India imported around $13.3 billion worth of products, and organic chemicals, where India imported around $7.97 billion worth of products. In the category of toys, games and sports, we imported around $400.2 million worth of products.
Papa, I want toy. Papa, I don't want Chinese toys. I want Atmanirbhar toys.
Well, it has to be said that India has reduced imports in almost all these categories compared to the previous financial year, but a lot needs to be done to replace these Chinese imports with home-based products. And if you think you can remove China from world trade, for that matters India's trade, with a snap of a finger, then you must have $48 billion lying around to fill this trade gap.
China's economy has grown faster than that of any other major country. Once poor and underdeveloped, the Asian giant has now grown into one of the most important export markets for manufacturers from all over the world, a true heavyweight in international trade.
China's economic power has also changed the country's role at the world arena. From being a large-scale borrower, China has become one of the main contributors at the World Bank. According to the Harvard Business Review, China and its subsidiaries gave out loans of around $1.5 trillion to more than 150 countries, making China the largest official creditor in the world, more than the World Bank and IMF combined. But this is giving rise to what is called debt diplomacy, because when these countries are unable to pay off these loans, China can demand concessions and many other advantages. Just look what happened in Sri Lanka.
Protests erupted last year when Sri Lanka was forced to hand over control of the failed Hambantota port project over to China, after it found itself billions of dollars in debt to Beijing. China now has control of a key port on the doorstep of regional rival India, and a strategic foothold along a key commercial and military waterway.
When Boycott China is trending on social media, please don't do this. Because you already paid for it.